Okay, we got Project Colorado back in here in the backyard of the house. Kids are playing. We're going to try to get this Bison front bumper winch with the low tube grill guard on. We've laid our parts out here. You can see we've got several items laid out here. All of these are different parts that go to this AEV Bison front bumper. So this is a ZR2. They recently came out with the Bison edition that comes with this piece already on it, but we opted for this low tube grill mount. It's a dark gray color. They have 3 different colors. Comes with the matching skid plate for the front to match the other skid plates we have on the truck. So let's get started and get this thing put on. Okay, so step 1, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 15s that need to be removed. Alright, we've got a bunch of, let's see here, this is a T15. So we've got 6 of these across the top of the grill, and then we've got a bunch of them, a gazillion, down around the perimeter of the bumper along the bottom. So let's get all those. Alright, we've got a couple of 10mm bolts that are in the front. Okay, we're looking at the front grill through this gap, and you can see it right here at the end of my finger. So there's 2 tins we need to take off, and they were supporting the grill from the back side. Alright, now on the back side of the bumper here, if we pull this inner fender liner back, we've got a couple of 7mm up in this seam. Actually, they go up here like this. So we've got to get those 2 7s out, and then we should be able to pop this front factory bumper off. Alright, so I was actually wrong. There are 3. If you can see right here, here's 1, 2, and the 3rd one is way up front, way up there. But they're kind of hard to get to, but doesn't take too long. All right, now that we've got all those things apart, you can snap this flare. Just kind of snaps off out of the way. We did that before we pulled that fender liner out to get those 3 7mm out. So you'll just grasp a hold of this, and it snaps off. And then we'll go over here to the other side. Have your helper just kind of hold that. And we'll pop this side off too. And then now this whole thing should kind of pull off, we think. It's been a while since we've had this off, and kind of forgot what all we have. Let's go over here to the other side. Okay, yeah, there was 2 more 10mm now that I think about it. I believe. Yeah, there they are. 1 right here and 1 over here. So those 2 10s that we went up through this hole, there's actually 4. So we need to get the 2 center ones, and then we can pull the front bumper off. All right, so we got those 2 off, so we'll just grab a hold of the front bumper, shake some dirt out, and there's one of our 10s that we dropped. And it feels like we're still hung up on something here. Let's see here. Something in the middle here. Oh, I see. It's actually just a clip. So right in here, you see this clip. We just need to wedge a screwdriver right here and snap that off. There's one side. We'll come over here and get the second one right there. And this whole thing should come off. And we can take it over to our pile and put it out of the way. Now we have our naked truck ready for a new bumper and winch. All right, our next step after we get the bumper off is to remove this intrusion beam. So we're going to pop that off. That's a 15 millimeter. We've already cracked them loose with a ratchet. And then we want to remove the tow hooks and retain the hooks and the hardware. So 18 millimeter on the outside and 18 on the inside. Our next item is to drill, well, not to drill, but we've got some frame tube things to drill, but we have to trim the wheel liner for the contour of the new bumper. So we're gonna go print those templates off and we'll be right back. All right, so we had this lower splash guard and bumper support that needs to come off. It's a 10 millimeter. And that whole piece comes off. All right, so we've marked the wheel liner here. There's a Sharpie mark. I don't know if you can see this, but it comes down here, cuts over, comes down. You can barely see it there in the video. It comes down right here and then it comes across. We're not gonna cut that just yet because we're not certain how that all fits up. So we're gonna wait till a little bit later. But for now, we have another template here. This is our frame side template. We're supposed to line up this hole with an existing hole and that one, which are these two here. So that will fit up here like that. And then we will mark this new hole to drill. However, ours is new enough, that hole is already there. So we didn't even need to worry about cutting these or printing these templates off. So if yours is built, I think, after 2018, if it's a 19 or 20, it's probably going to already have that in there. So we don't need to drill that hole and we can carry on. So installing the Bison front bumper on a ZR2 truck, you have to have the Chevrolet script grille, which doesn't come down as far. So the factory ZR2 grille comes down right here. So we went ahead and installed that grille. We got that from the GM dealership. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those T15 Torx. And then down here on the bottom of the grill, there's a 10 millimeter bolt that we removed earlier, and we put those back in. And the grill is finally installed. We've had that for several months now, waiting for that to be put on. So it's done, and we can carry on to the next step. All right, we have this rubber gap filler piece that goes in, and basically it has these little tabs. And you'll snap those in. You'll hear it click here. Let's get it up a little closer. And that snaps in all the way around through there. And then this top little one catches that edge just barely and snaps in right there. So that is installed now. Okay, we're skipping around a little bit, but there is an L bracket that we've got on the top side of here that comes out and down to support the inner wheelhouse liner. And that goes, this is the new 10, and the bracket extends over here above the top of the fender and then comes down. And remember, you've got 1, 2, 3, 7 millimeters that come in from the inside and come down into those headlight filler panels. All right, so we've got our bumper support brackets on. You can see right here the factory 2 tow hook brackets are fit here. There's a large hole that goes over that captive nut on the frame, and then here's the hole in the back that we would have had to drill, but we didn't because our model is a newer model. So we're going to get these brackets bolted on now. All right, so we've got the bumper bracket slightly held on with the tow hook, factory tow hook bolts, and we have this inner liner support bracket. It's going to slide up right here in place, and then we're going to tighten that 10mm bolt. And we'll do that to the other side. All right, next we are going to have a flag nut and a bracket and a M10 bolt. We have those here for the passenger side. We've already installed the driver's side. As you can see here, this is that hole in the side of the frame with the flag nut on the back side, and then it's capturing this press tube support. So that's the final look of that, and we'll put one on the other side as well. All right, so this air diversion piece has to be removed for the winch. We had 1, 2, 3 clips, and then it has a snap on each side that snaps into this rectangular hole. And you can see those clips broke off of this one as we removed it. So that won't be needed. While we were here, we popped off these panels. They just simply grab a hold of them and they unsnap, and there was all kinds of debris and leaves packed in behind there. So if you're doing this, I would recommend removing those temporarily and cleaning that out, and then we snap them back in place because it doesn't mention anything about that, removing those. So we're going to leave those for now. All right, we've flipped the bumper over on its face, and this big plastic piece has to come off and is not used with a winch. So we're going to pop all the clips off of that and get that ready for the next step. All right, so we have that plastic piece removed, and it should look like this now. And on the back side of here, we've got some cage nuts that are pre-installed in the bumper, and we just basically, you pinch the back side, they're snapped in, you pinch them and pull those out. So there's one here and one here, and we've removed those. All right, so moving on to our winch installation, it wants us to remove this M10 bolt and this M6 bolt, and then it wants us to unclip this overflow tube. So we're going to take that 13mm head out, the 10mm head, and unsnap this hose. So in preparation for us to trim these headlight filler panels correctly without any instruction on that, we're going to temporarily bolt the bumper into place before we proceed with the winch install, because per AEV's instructions, this installation is if your truck's already equipped with the Bison front bumper, which ours was not. So we're going to try to get the main structure of the bumper on and our headlight filler panels, and then we can proceed with the winch installation instructions. So we're going to get 2 helpers to hold it up and start 2 bolts in these factory frame holes here. Okay, you can see here where we have trimmed off those filler panels. We popped the grill off. It's laying over there. But we have taken a razor knife and cut from the back side those filler panels and installed those on the truck. So what we did, we put those 3 7mm screws down from the top, from the inside back here, snapped this back in place, put that top inner wheel liner in place, went ahead and got our trimming done. So we followed that line that we marked earlier, and it wants you to follow that tangent all the way to the inside. So that straight cut will be the new trim for the liner. But we did discover something, and that is this right here. So evidently you have to have the Bison filler panels. This is a straight line. The Bison grill curves down right here, so there's nothing holding this little section on. So that's flapping. We're going to get on the back side of that somehow to attach that in, and we're just going to live with this little gap until we can get the proper filler panels ordered and painted. So went ahead over here, put that one on as well, just so it would look nice while driving around till those other panels come in. It fits just fine along here though. This looks good. You can see here, this bumper is made for the Bison flare, so it cuts out where that wide flare comes up. So as soon as the cutout flares for 35s, for 35-inch tires comes out, we're gonna get those and put those on. But we need to get these new filler panels and have them painted so everything looks like it's supposed to look. Also, bumper is held on. We have a 15mm bolt here, 15mm bolt in there, and on the underside we have 1, 2, 3, and the one out here for this support tube that comes in to the frame. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten, let's see, it's 5, 6, 7, looks like 14 with 15mm heads. So we're gonna tighten those now and get this bumper fastened to the truck. And then you're gonna go back, and they want you to hold this tow hook in the most upright position. So see how it's adjustable? They want you to hold it up so we can tighten those two 18s on each side. All right, it's getting pretty late in the day. We're gonna wrap things up outside this evening, but the bumper is mostly on, as you can see here. Looks great. Oh, and newsflash, I'm an idiot, because we have those Bison filler panels. I forgot we ordered them, or maybe they just come with the bumper and I don't know about it. But we will have these painted white, and I'm probably going to leave that hole there. It says we can have that filled if we're not using the flares, but since we're using those fender flares that are the cutout for the 35-inch tires, we're going to use these. So I'll go ahead and get those painted. I don't paint, so a body shop will do that for us, and we'll get those put on. But anyway, we're going to continue tomorrow with the winch install, the front tube center section, and get this thing completed. That way we can show you the final product. So hang tight and stay with us. Project ZR2 diesel coming right up. All right, it's a new day and we are back in the shop here. Moved inside because it was going to rain, but we chose the Warn 9.5 XP, which is the AEV recommended winch for the application. We got one with steel cable because we are going to upgrade that to a synthetic rope. Yes, they do make the 9.5 XP with synthetic rope, but we opted for the Masterpull. This is the Superline XD rope. It's 3/8 85 foot and has a much better abrasion resistance than the Warn Spydura rope that comes on the winches. So we always choose that for applications, especially for personal rigs that we're using here at the shop. All right, our first step, we've got 4 5/16 bolts on the corner of the controller, and we're going to remove those. All right, coming into the contactor pack, we have the 2 field windings and the A terminal. So we've got A, F1, and F2. The one here that actually has conduit on it, that is your battery power feed. So the other 3, this one, and this one, we're going to remove from the contactor. All right, so here are the 3 cables we removed from that contactor pack. You can see they're labeled A, F1, and F2. And normally they're mounted right to the top of the winch and they just loop around to the motor. So with the AEV bumper, our solenoid contactor pack will be under the hood. And then they supply this with their winch install kit, these longer cables. So you can see here they are considerably longer to go from inside the hood down to the bumper where the winch will be located. So we will install those cables now. All right, so we've got this solenoid pack attached. We reinstalled the 4 5/16 bolts, and then there are 2 studs that come through the back side of this solenoid pack mounting to the AEV bracket. It should look like this when it's all finished. XP facing out where those 2 tabs are, and then coming out of the back side we've got our 3 new cables, and then we have this motor ground wire that we are going to splice into this one. So this one is extending all the way down with the other cables that are going to go to the winch. They've already crimped on one side of that splice, and we're just going to cut it and splice this to this. Okay, we've mounted our solenoid pack, contactor control pack, back under the hood with the AEV bracket. And as you can see here, we have the bolts that we previously removed, so a 13mm head there, and a 10mm head there. And then down in here, you can see that bracket leg. I'll try to move it around. Anyway, at the very bottom of that, there's a square hole, and we're going to insert this carriage bolt and 10mm nut from underneath the fender. All right, the next step in our process, this is the motor housing on the side of the winch. There are 2 10mm bolts right here that hold it on, and that piece just slides out of the side. And if we have this motor assembly facing to where the legs are facing this way, you can see the factory drain holes here and here. We're going to seal those up with silicone, and then down here next to this motor housing bolt location, we're going to grind another spot to be our new moisture drain. So we're going to seal these up with silicone and cut a new drain down here. All right, so here's our new slot. We didn't really have a great way of cutting this, so we used a cutoff wheel on a die grinder. So moisture can exit out the bottom of the winch now. We're going to put the motor housing back on, and you can see here's where the bolts originally were. The motor housing now is going to be bolted on the side too, to where the cables are facing the bottom of the winch when installed on the vehicle. All right, we have the motor assembly bolted back on, and you can see here where the silicone is oozed out where we sealed up those factory holes. So we'll just wipe those off. And then down here on the bottom, let's scoot this winch off the side here a little bit. You can see the drain hole right up in here that we created. So feet facing forward, motor terminals to the bottom. All right, so we now have the winch mounted. What we've done, the winch goes in from the bottom and goes up, and you can see here we have indexed the lever for free spool and engage to where there's an open window here, so you'll be able to reach your hand in and control that. Now, this is completely opposite of a winch, how it would be mounted on a traditional vehicle or Jeep. So this opening goes over top of the drum. Normally, when you wind your rope in, the fair lead is offset to the bottom of the drum, so it's rolling in from the bottom and going back over the top. Well, the winch has been flipped, so now the rope will go in over top of the drum this way and curve under and roll in this direction here. So that all makes sense now that we see it on the truck. And over here you can see our motor terminals are facing the bottom. Feet of the winch are facing forward. We are using the worn supplied 3/8/16 bolts on the bottom and the 4-inch supplied bolts from AEV on the top. Now, AEV says in their instructions that these are M10 bolts. These are actually a 3/8/16 because this is an old style worn winch, so they still use the 3/8/16 square nuts in the bottom of the feet. So once we get this in, we're going to remove these 2 4-inch bolts but the two lower bolts are going to remain tight. That way we can get our fair lead mounted later in the installation. It will slide in here in this position. All right, now we have the winch wired up. You can see our green, blue, and yellow terminals here are hooked to the winch. They run along the frame cross member tube, and they come through this little gap right here and go up to the bottom of the solenoid pack behind the air box. So just be careful when you route these. Make sure that you can place some zip ties in strategic locations just to keep them from chafing on anything metal, causing issues down the road. All right, so we've dropped the fair lead in and fed the winch rope through the fair lead into the drum, and right here we've got our Masterpull line attached to the drum. So we are ready to proceed with the air deflector trimming, and we'll get that reinstalled. All right, there are scribe marks on the back side of this air diverter, and this piece is normally in here. So what we've done is taken a razor knife and cut that out, and then this diverter will slide back into the bumper, and then you'll have access to see your winch as it's being spooled up, to get it spooled correctly. So we're going to have a clip right here, 4 clips in there, 4 clips on the other side. Our next step after installing the air diversion piece, we will bring over to our center section, which is, we've got the new low tube center section, and we'll have 2 studs that get installed on the underside of the tube. Make sure that goes in about 5 or 6 turns. And then that's installed, and then we went ahead and installed the one over here as well. All right, so the AEV bumper comes with a cage nut on this top hole. So you've got 3 Torx bolts holding the factory front fascia on, but we are using that low tube center section, so we want to get back in here with a pick, pop that cage nut out of the way. There we go, and one of them dropped down. The other one will be hidden up here. We'll grab it here in a minute. So we're gonna now hang the low tube center section on. There we go. All right, our next step is to install our 4 new Torx bolts in the front face. Okay, we're on the back side of the bumper, and on that low tube center section where that bar there comes down, there's a stud that we installed, and the nut for that is right up there. So we'll need like a long extension and a short 15 socket, and we can probably get those tightened up, and the front low tube center section will be complete. All right, so we've got our low tube center section bolted on, and we need to do a few more things underneath, but we're going to go ahead and skip ahead and get our winch wiring done. Typically what they want you to do is take this tin and this tin off, and they want you to route this power cable underneath. As you can see here, we already have our onboard air hose routed under that, so we're going to swap the two, and then what we'll do is probably fasten the air line to the top side of the power cable once we get it in there. All right, and then we're gonna go back and we're gonna zip tie our hose for our onboard air to the top of that, and then we'll route our cables over to the other side over here. We've already modified the wiring to the battery and removed this little cover. So we were gonna have this cable attaching over here, and then our ground wire that's coming up from underneath, it goes around to the ground of the battery as well. All right, now we have our winch wiring finished up, and we've got the rope sticking out of the front. So going over here to the battery, what we did is we piggybacked off of this pinch stud. You need to make sure that this terminal is all the way down on the battery. That way when this is tied, it pinches the post, and you shouldn't be able to move that any. And then the back has an accessory 6mm post on it, so we added our ground cable to there. So now we're going to check operation. We've got just the wired hand remote. So here we have in and out. All right, so we're going to go outside and get this rope spooled up all the way, and then we'll proceed with the skid plate and the wheelhouse closeouts that are going to cover up this area down here. All right, we've installed our inner wheelhouse liners. This is a plastic piece on each side, and you have one 10mm head M6 bolt there on the inside. Then we've got two, there's one and there's one T15 screws, another one, and then two down there. So holding this in is 6 of these T15 screws, and then 1 of the M6 hex bolts. And then here on the inner liner, there is 2 pieces here, and the fabric or felt factory liner sandwiches between that to give a nice sealed off good appearance. All right, now we have our lower skid plates are ready to go on. So we've got 2 frame supports. This will go up behind here, and you will see those line up in there. And we'll put 2 15mm head bolts through there, and we'll do that on each side. All right, so we have all of our bolts tight on this lower skid. So again, 2 15s back there, 2 15s on each side, a 15 going into the lower radiator support, a T30 going into the lower radiator support, some T50 Torx going into the front, some T30 Torx going in each side, and then your 7/32 Allens that are holding the fair lead, this front piece, to the winch, to the factory square nuts in the winch. So we've got a few more things to do. We've got a Flatlink E that we will mount to our fair lead, and that'll fold up nice and flat. And then we've got to do some wiring for the fog lights. We haven't decided what we're going to do yet on the fog lights. It came with some really nice factory appearing fog lights, and we can get the AEV Bison switch for the dash. But what we're probably going to do is put some LED bulbs in those, and then maybe add a 20 or 30 inch light bar here to the top of the bumper between the tube and the bumper. Alright, so our last little section of putting this bumper on is our Flatlink E. It's going to go right here. The pin drops in, and then we've got this little snap ring that will snap in right here. Alright, just tap it once then. Tap it one more time. That should do it.